The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Access Television, the City of Oshkosh, the Oshkosh Cable Television Advisory Commission, or Time Warner Cable.
Welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm Cheryl Hentz, along with former Oshkosh Mayor and City Councilwoman Melanie Bloechl. It's time for another viewpoint, and so that's what we're going to do tonight. Just Mel and I, just talking about things on our mind, things on your mind, and things that we want to share with you. I guess one of the first things that we want to talk about here is we're taping this on the 22nd of July, and of course this was the day that our former Winnebago County District Attorney Joe Paulus was supposed to be getting sentenced. And the sentencing was delayed as of yesterday.
And for once, a delay is a good thing.
Yes, yes. For anyone who has not gotten the news, of course, it was adjourned to a later date, yet to be announced. We don't know when that new sentencing date will be. But because the judge, the federal judge, William Griesbach up in Green Bay, decided that the sentencing guidelines, the federal sentencing guidelines that he had to work with did not go far enough to punish Mr. Paulus for the deeds that he did. And, you know, the guidelines were that he was going to get probably around 33 months in federal prison. But, yeah, you know, Judge Griesbach apparently thinks that that Mr. Paulus deserves more. And you actually made that point a long time ago. You said he should get the full 8 years, which is what he could get under federal law for the things that he did. So I guess it's going to be rather interesting to see how this turns out.
Well, I think that this judge has shown a lot of moxie. I mean, you know, judges are elected officials as well. And it is very nice to see that indeed there is somebody out there that is concerned about not just about the law being broken, you know, just on paper, but he is taking into account that there's a spirit of the law that needs to be taken into consideration, and the irreparable damage that has been caused to Winnebago County as a whole. I mean, you know, we have been fortunate to have a history in Winnebago County, the city of Oshkosh, and quite frankly, even the state of Wisconsin, up till some recent years of being a pretty clean state, running our affairs by the book, because we've had people who have really been concerned about being watchdogs and paying close attention. And when something like this happens, it unfortunately has that ripple effect. Mm-hmm. It undermines people's confidence in justice. I mean, when you start getting that feeling that justice really is for sale, mm-hmm, and that you're not going to get a fair shake in your county, or it's the who knows who and who did who in order to get things done in your favor, people have a very jaded view of their sense of justice. And I think that this judge is very forward thinking to incorporate that in his sentencing, because this was a high ranking official. This was the highest judicial head that we had here in our family seat, in our seat at Winnebago County as the district attorney. I think it goes, for me personally, I think it goes even further, because what irritates me about all of this is that, you know, in speaking about this particular issue, I think it's very interesting that the Northwestern for like the last month and a half has been plastering this all over the front page. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, page after page and pictures and, oh my God, storylines and everything like that. The thing that bothers me about this is that they had been made aware through various sources that there were things that were not right at the Winnebago County District Attorney's Office. They also were aware that they were standing by the back door getting special treatment and special stories and special information leaked to them by an anonymous source, and we all know who that anonymous source was. So they were privileged to get certain information, and they kept quiet. They let this go on. This newspaper says that it's an investigative newspaper, that it digs into stories, and it's part of the Gannett investigative line, and it didn't do anything. It took two young guys, fresh out of law school, to lose their jobs.
And a Menasha cop.
And a Menasha cop who they beat the living tar out of.
And I want to talk about that in a moment too, but go ahead.
They beat the living tar out of poor Ann Gullner because she dared to stand up and do something. They beat up E.J. Jelinski. They went after Tom Chalkoff. These people had their jobs threatened in Ann's case. E.J. Edmund Jelinski and Tom Chalkoff both lost their jobs, lost their homes, racked up bills. These two men and this one young woman took an entire county and newspaper system on and challenged them. And what they got in return for that was nothing short of a public lynching and tar and feathering. And now the Northwestern wants to come out as though they're doing us some sort of favor after the fact to report what has happened. If it wasn't for these three young people, this still would not be broken. This cycle of corruption, this insidious behavior would have been allowed to continue because no one else had the guts to try to stop it. And we owe such a huge debt to those three people. And I will never, ever forget what they did or how they tried to save us as a community from this. So, you know, does Mr. Paulus deserve whatever he gets? Yeah. And do I think that this should be looked at in harsher terms? Yes, I do.
And just a point of clarification, you know, Tom and EJ didn't lose their personal homes. They just lost their professional home where they spent, you know, 10, 12, 16 hours a day for the short term or the short time that they were in the district attorney's office. We just need to make that clarification. They didn't lose the home as in.
Well,
where
they didn't have
resided.
a home because they didn't have employment. They had some difficulty with rental and paying bills, like any of us would if we lost our jobs.
Yes. So Mr. Paulus is going to be sentenced.
Don't forget
at a later date.
One other point, and I'm sorry to interrupt, because while they may not have lost homes, they were also blackballed in the community. In when they tried to go out and get jobs with other district attorneys in the area, they were blackballed because of what they had done.
Quite a few did. I think there were a couple who, you know, said, "Yay, attaboy,"
but didn't hire them.
Well, I don't know that they had openings or that Tom and EJ were really interested. I mean, I don't know. It seems like a long time ago, and yet it seems like just yesterday. But in any event, you know, they both went into private practice. They're doing well. They were on the show a few months back, and
those are the kind of guys I want as attorneys. You know, they're fighters. They're not going to give up, and nothing scares them.
Well, and speaking of not giving up, you make an excellent point. They did take on the state too, because after all, they were employed by the state. Mr. Paulus fired them for what they felt were improper reasons, and it was in the newspaper today, again, July 22nd, that they are each going to be receiving a settlement from the state of $170,000 each, and so good for them.
Do you not find it interesting? They take on the state, but the state's position is, because of course the state didn't step into this till, of course, Mr. Paulus was splashed all over everything, and he actually admits guilt and all this kind of stuff. So the state was a bunch of cowards too. You know, the Office of Lawyer Regulations was nowhere to be found. The Bar Association was nowhere to be found. You know, you talk about a bunch of chicken-livered individuals. It's just amazing to me that all of these lofty organizations that are supposed to be out there being the watchdogs of the judicial system and thereby the attorneys associated with the judicial system did absolutely nothing. Nothing. No. And what's really interesting is that now the state comes out and they say, well, you know, we're not going to admit that we did anything wrong here. we're not implying that we have any responsibility or culpability in any of this, but oh, by the way, here's your $170,000 check. Bye-bye now. Just go away, please, quietly and quickly.
You know, the other thing about the Northwestern, not only were the articles in the paper about Paulus's sentencing being postponed and Tom and EJ getting their settlement from the state, but it was splashed along the entire left side of the opinion page in the same newspaper. And I don't disagree inherently with the Northwestern's position that the punishment must fit the crime. But what I found really, it just smacks of hypocrisy, is this part in particular, almost toward the end. And I'll just read this snippet. It says, "And why did a Menasha police officer crack a case that the city of Oshkosh officers or Winnebago County deputies did not?" Well, excuse me, Oshkosh Northwestern, but for months you people bastardized this officer, saying how she stepped over her bounds, she shouldn't have done this, she shouldn't have done that. You bastardized this poor woman. She was the black sheep of the community, probably the worst thing that you could expect to find in law enforcement if you read some of the editorials that you people wrote. And now you come along and laud her and say, oh, and by the way, you City of Oshkosh cops and you county cops, what is wrong with you that you couldn't do it, that a Menasha PD officer had to do it? What's wrong with you? And I'll just leave it at that. I sound like Ken Bender from the city council meetings now. I'll leave it at that.
I'll leave it at that.
And they're calling for reform, and I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing either.
Well, I think it's very interesting because they're calling for reform, but they don't specifically say where the reform is needed. I mean, they're saying that the way that the system was set up when Mr. Paulus was there was that the deputy DA, who of course was John Jorgensen at the time, and Tom Gritton, who of course they didn't know anything, they didn't see anything, they didn't hear anything. They don't know anything, hear nothing, you know, kind of like Colonel Clink. But they're not, and they actually suggest that this could actually happen again. That if certain things aren't done, that this could happen again. Well, how would that happen again if we have the watchdog press on the alert?
Well, I don't know if you happened to see the news last night. I believe it was Channel 2 News, where current DA Bill Lennon was on there, and as with Joe Paulus, he is the only one who can sign off on some of these amended deals. So yes, the same thing could still happen again, but we've beaten up on Bill Lennon in the past.
When he's got it coming.
Yep, when he's got it coming, we've beaten up on him. And, he actually seems to be trying to put forth some good here and turn this around a little bit. He's come up with a form where if there's going to be a reduction in punishment or a reduction in the type of crime that they're actually going to charge a defendant with, this form has to be filled out. And, I haven't seen it. Just heard about it like everyone else on the news, but at least it seems like he's taking a step in the right direction. But did you see the whole report where they had John Jorgensen on there? All of a sudden now he's sitting there saying, well, looking back on this, I can see how this would have happened. Still not claiming that he knew anything, although E.J. Jelinski, when he was on the show, said, BS, he knew exactly what was going on. He was in the same meetings and he heard the same things and he saw a lot of the same things.
And he wasn't the only one.
No. And it's not just John Jorgensen, but again, the same point that we have made for 2 years or better. You cannot expect people to believe that you've worked in this office for a decade or close to it and you've not seen or heard anything. And yet 2 young guys and a cop, 2 young guys who are only a year and a half out of law school, and a cop with a good sniffer apparently, they smelt something that stunk.
You know what the problem here is that they not only had a sense of right and wrong, these 3 young people, Ann Gullner, Edmund Jelinski, Tom Chalkoff, They were born with a sense of right and wrong. They were taught right and wrong. But they were actually born with a spine, which is something that evidently, once you've been in these offices for a period of time,
You develop scoliosis, apparently.
well, or you become an amoeba. and body parts fall off like your collective cojones.
Well, it's interesting the way this is all turning out, but I think that there is, I don't know, I think there's a silver lining in this cloud. And
Well, I think
it's
don't
all
you-
going to turn out for the best, I think.
Don't you think it's also kind of taught people, and like I said, I just have such great respect and admiration for these three people, because doing the right thing was probably the hardest thing on these people ever. I mean, they took so much abuse. Their families took so much abuse, and it was a personal onslaught about something that really needed to be taken a look at. And if anything good comes of this, I think they have stood up and said, doing the right thing may not be the easy thing, but it was what we needed to do, and now we're being vindicated. That it's tough to do the right thing, especially when you don't have cooperation from the powers to be. Because they like the fix-in. They like this good old boy network. They get their stories and they get to beat their, the press compadres. And, they've got this incestuous little relationship. They don't want that all to break up and go away. They don't want that to all break up and go away. And the powers to be in the community had things the way that they wanted. It was just schmucks who were probably on a road to nowhere fast.
That's right.
God forbid we would have broke the law.
Yeah.
I was kind of concerned about us, when this was all going on. I'm wondering, I wonder how many tickets I'm going to be getting for shooting off my mouth. But obviously that didn't stop me either.
No, nor me. It didn't stop any of us who worked in some small way on a campaign or a movement or a cause. And that's what this country is all about, is standing up for
tenaciousness, baby.
standing up for what you believe in, to be right. For having the courage of your convictions. That's what it's all about. Very briefly, because we've got a lot of different things to cover here, but the petition drive is still going on for the change of government referendum for the upcoming ballot. And if you're interested in signing a petition or you'd like more information, feel free to give us a call. We're just two of the people involved in this, and we'll be happy to get the information to you or get a petition to you. But in this past Sunday's paper, July 18th, cute little cartoon on the editorial
Humorous,
page.
yes.
It is. And for those who didn't see it, and I'm not going to hold it up, but there's two little kids playing in a sandbox, and they're voters. And there's a shovel in a pail here, and the pail is marked Citizens for Responsible Government, which is the group that we are a part of with our petition drive. And the sand is called Two Defeated Resolutions. And then you've got the Oshkosh City Council, who's this really nasty looking cat, and I think that is so appropriate. And the one kid here, the one named voter, he says to the other little voter, he says, every time we get close to this sandbox, that cat shows up. And
The cat pooped in the sandbox, too.
And it's kind of like what the city council has done. They've
Pooped on us.
Yes. Well, they've pooped on us. They've pooped on Councilman Esslinger. They've pooped on Councilman Peschel.
Yes.
Every time the voters in this community have an opportunity to have some strength, some voice, more than what we have right now, this city council just takes a dump all over it. That's the bottom line. I'm glad you got a kick out of that, but that's about the truth. And the editorial cartoonist here hit it right on the money.
But did you see the council meeting? What predicated that cartoon was the council meeting.
Yes.
Did you watch the council meeting?
I watched it. I watched it with great intensity. And again, I hear people like, and I'm sure everybody out there saw the council meeting. Again, this has been discussed. This has been brought forward by two different council members now, two different proposals on two different occasions, and over the course of, about a month?
Oh, easily, yeah.
I would say. And these 5 people on that council, and I'm not talking about Paul Esslinger, and I'm not talking about Brian Peschel.
The people know who the Fab Five
Yeah,
are.
they
They've
know
been
who
paying
the Fab
attention.
Five are. You know, they sit there, they are such hypocrites. They will sit there and on the one hand say, you know, I have no problem giving the people a chance to, you know, vote for
the
what they
mayor.
want and vote for a mayor. Well, then why the hell don't you? What is your problem? You won't put anything forward. Burke Tower, Big B Tower, he just wants to sit there and talk about it and talk about it and talk about it. Burke, I know that you're, you know, a freshman councilman, but sir, if you don't get off the dime, you won't pass any legislation in your first term, and it will likely be your last term. Because you can't just spend 2 years sitting on that council dais and just talk and talk and talk. You know, some of us talk and others of us talk and then we walk. And, you know, some of us just aren't happy to just sit there and do nothing.
Well,
and if they, you know, they want to have a workshop. They want to have a workshop and hear what the people have to say. Well, first of all, the citizens can't talk at a workshop.
Exactly.
You know, so you would be hearing nothing from the citizens. But if you really want to listen to the citizens, you guys have had plenty of opportunity to hear the citizens. They come up at the council meeting. Now, it may be the same folks who come up all the time, but they come up at your council meetings. And whether you folks want to believe it or not on that city council, the people who come up and speak during citizen comments, they do speak the minds of a lot of us out there. Melanie and I have a perfect opportunity. We've got a show, pardon me, where we can sit and mouth off about our concerns and what the people want. But if you're truly listening to what these folks say when they come up to the podium and talk to you, heed what they're saying, because they are speaking the minds and the feelings of so many people in this community. And instead, you'd just rather turn a deaf ear and a blind eye and say, well, we want to hear what people have to say, so let's have a workshop where they can't speak.
Well, it's interesting because I listened. I was very, very irritated. Frank Tower's proposal was to just directly elect a mayor with no power. So basically, you've accomplished nothing but appeasing people to say, well, at least you got to elect the mayor. Yeah. Now, please remember, this is the same guy and the same part of the Fab Five that the last time they selected the mayor, they selected Mark Harris, okay? And the same Fab Five selected Frank Tower.
Tower, yeah.
Yes, Frank Tower, who does not have as much experience as Paul Esslinger, who by rights, if everything flowed the way it normally flowed in this wonderful homogenous society that is supposed to be our city council, Paul Esslinger should have been the deputy mayor. Well, this same Fab Five decided that they were going to change that, and they put Mr. Frank Tower in there, who by all of a sudden has gone from mute to speak-a-talk.
Oh, yeah.
And it's amazing that when you get a title, all of a sudden what you have to say seems to be importante. But nonetheless, as I'm listening to Mr. Tower state that, you know, he feels as though a directly elected mayor is sufficient to give the people of this community what they want. Mr. Tower, emptiness is still just emptiness, okay? This is still zero. You can call it something else, but it's still a big fat, okay? Nothing. You gave us nothing, and you should be ashamed of yourself for giving us nothing and acting as though you just did us a favor. Okay, so we have that, and then we have Mr. Esslinger, who actually has the fortitude to put together a proposal that encompassed all the concerns that the newspaper, both Mr. Towers, Mrs. Maddox, I mean, the constituent that he listened to, he tried to incorporate all of this stuff. Now you have all these people coming forward, and if you were, Mr. Burke Tower, if you were listening when you were actually in those council chambers, because I watched, I don't know if you just turned the hearing off or what you did here, but I listened, and there was a large number of people, different people, wasn't always the same people.
Some people that we've never seen before.
Correct. Getting up and talking, and one of the things they said is Frank Tower's proposal was stinking up the place. That is a quote. That is not, it smelled, it was stinking up the place, it did nothing, it was a big fat zero. That mine might have been the big fat zero. And then they talked about Mr. Esslinger's proposal. And I think the people that came up brought up some valid points, that there could have been some tweaking of Mr. Esslinger's proposal that would have made it a workable resolution or an ordinance change, and still put it on the ballot and give people an opportunity. What I found frustrating, nobody offered any amendments. And Mr. Bergtower, he says, well, I haven't heard, and nobody's calling me, and I don't hear what people want. You just had a group of people in front of you. You never asked them any questions. You never asked any questions. You never offered any amendments. You didn't do any work whatsoever. Okay. So you just sit on your duff and you do nothing. And then after all is said and done and nothing happens again, because, of course, we need more information. God, if I hear that again. And what's irritating about when I hear council members say, I need more information, that council agenda comes the Friday before. Okay? They get a packet of information delivered, by the way, to their homes. It's not like they have to go and pick it up. It's delivered to their homes on Friday. You have Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday until the Tuesday council meeting to review that material. If you have questions or amendments to offer or additional information that you may need, it would be incumbent upon you as an elected official to actually do something about it. Here's an idea. Do your homework. That is what when you come into those chambers, we expect that you've done some research, that you may have some intelligent questions, that you might actually pose some thought-provoking ideas instead of going, well, I need more information. Okay, so you need more information, and like Cheryl said, you suggest a workshop which does not allow public input. It's only for the council members to espouse their views back and forth and maybe get expert testimony. But the public doesn't get any input. But here's what I don't get. If you're not sure what people want, because you had two proposals for a mayor that you could put on the ballot. One, the big fat zero of just electing a mayor with no power, and so you know who's going to be waving in parades. Okay. And then you have one that had some meat to it, that had veto power, and that could suggest the firing of certain department heads with the majority consensus of the council. Okay? And also sat on the Plan Commission, which I still can't figure out what the big deal is there. The guy will run the meeting, or the gal will run the damn meeting.
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah.
So what? The mayor an elected mayor should know what's going on as far as planning for this community in the next year. They should be at the table. Anybody who disagrees with that is a moron.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
But here's what I don't understand. You got these two proposals, but you're not quite sure, what the public wants. Okay? You don't ask any intelligent questions. You don't propose any amendments. So put them both on the ballot. And here's an idea. You put them on the ballot, and you let the people decide, and when the vote comes in, then you know what they want. Because they actually got to vote.
Well, and if the city council is paying any attention, they are checking out our website, and they are checking out the Oshkosh Northwestern's online website, or online poll rather, on their website, because we both have polls running right now asking specifically about what kind of mayor this community wants. Ours actually is a little bit more broader of a poll. It asks, I believe, it's been a while since I've put it up there, but I think it talks about the type of government, or maybe this one does talk about the type of mayor.
Do you want a mayor with power?
Yeah, basically.
Or do you want a ceremonial mayor?
Yeah. Do you want a mayor with some power?
Do you want somebody that you can go to and say, you know what? I've had enough of this garbage. And I expect you to do something, and you're going to take responsibility for what's going on. Yeah. And if you don't, we're going to unelect you just as fast as we elected you.
That's
now,
correct.
here's the beauty of this proposal. For all those people who are concerned that the populist vote will get somebody in there that doesn't know their hinder from their head, you still have the professional component. You still have a city manager who runs the day-to-day operations.
Yep.
Now, the other thing I keep hearing is, we don't need two high-priced positions. Okay, which part of this don't we get? We have a city manager who's making well over $95,000 a year. Okay, that's your high-priced, day-to-day operations guy or gal, whoever we have, right? Your mayor will still be a part-time mayor, and the salary caps off at $4,000. $4,000 for a part-time mayor. Now,
Well,
if
it
the
could
city
go more. It could go more if they
right,
wanted
and
to.
that's where I was going to go. The city council can increase the wages of that mayor if they so choose. But I'm here to tell you, there is no political will to increase somebody's salary,
Right.
so that isn't going to happen. The only place they want to spend your money, ladies and gentlemen, is in the downtown. They're not going to give the mayor a raise because they probably won't even like the mayor, because the mayor may decide that downtown is a waste of our time. But I digress. What I don't understand here is if you're not sure what the public is saying, let them do the talking. And the best place to find out what all the people want is at the polls.
Yep.
Because your workshop isn't going to get it done. I mean, the workshop is a great place to trade ideas. But there was a perfect opportunity to trade ideas at a working council meeting.
Yeah. And I think that shows right there that, truth be known, these people don't want any change.
No.
They don't care what people think.
No. They
That
don't,
is so obvious.
They don't want change. Why would you change a system that has worked so well? They're
them.
in power.
For them.
Yeah,
Yes.
they're in power. They get the say. They get to control the budget. They get to drive the money where it goes. If the jobs leave town, it's not their fault. They're only part-time city council members. It's not our fault.
Yeah.
There's no accountability. So when it really hits the fan, they can walk away and say, well, I've got a full-time job, and, you can't expect me to take care of all this. And what we're saying is that that's just not good enough. In this economy, in a global market, everybody says we have to start thinking more like business. Well, damn, then we should start thinking more like business, and we need to have a CEO that's answerable to the board of directors, and that be us.
That's right. And I want to bring up a couple other points, too, about full-time versus part-time. Burke Tower, at one of the council meetings, sat there and said, well, an elected mayor, we're going to have to know what kind of hours this person's going to be accountable, this kind of thing. Burke, you ran for city council back this last April, just 3 months ago. And during the campaigns and so forth, you're controlling a budget. Mel, how much is the city budget?
Oh, gosh, I'd be lying. Probably, one of the last ones I was on was, I think, $57 million.
Okay. So it's getting close to $60 million. And you're a part-time individual. You work as a full-time employee of the university system. Do you, if that's your logic, that people should know what hours this mayor's going to be available, you know what, if you run again, that'll be one of the first questions out of this talk show host's mouth, is what hours are you going to be available, what hours can constituents call you, and what are you going to start doing for us? If you want to ask those questions of an elected mayor, then by God, bub, you are going to answer them too.
Well, exactly, because it's really no different. What's the difference between a part-time elected city council member and a part-time elected mayor?
Well, and especially when, as a council member, you're going to have a lot more control over budgetary items and everything else. You have got your hands in everything.
That's right.
And under Mr. Esslinger's proposal, the elected mayor would only have had veto power or a vote to break a tie.
Correct.
And that would have been it. So while the mayor would have to have known everything that's going on and be well versed in it, that person would not be voting on the better majority of those things.
And he feels no problem with the fact that maybe
No.
his availability. And that's the other thing. I don't know about all you out there listening, but when I listen to Burke Tower talk and I hear him say that he's not getting phone calls and he's not hearing from people, and I've listened to some of the rationale that he's used in some of his arguments, I now know why.
Yeah.
I personally do not find him a person that is approachable. I mean, if all you can come up with is answers like, well, I need more information, or when the smoking ban thing came up, well, I'm not going to take a position on that. Well, okay, so I would approach you and ask you or tell you my issues why. You won't take a position, or you haven't done your homework, or you need more information, or you're going to offer a workshop where I can't have any input. I think that might be part of your problem.
Yeah. You know, someone else who didn't do their homework, and not that they needed to because they're not an elected official, but he got up there and spoke very adamantly against Mr. Esslinger's proposal, and that is a citizen by the name of Mark Schumerth. This guy got up at that council meeting and spun some of the most wretched rhetoric that I have ever heard. This guy was out in left field about the things he was talking about, and you know exactly the things he was saying.
Well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, from whose perspective is it not broke?
Apparently, he doesn't get out too damn much because there's an awful lot of people who think some things around here are broke. Mostly, it's the citizens. And, you know, what else did he say? He said something about, I think he said that it was going to be district representation. If you read the proposal, and there were plenty of opportunities to do so, it's been a public document that has been out there for weeks. There is no mention of districts anywhere in there. And if you don't understand the numbered seat concept, then before you open your mouth and engage your tongue, please ask some questions, or at least get up there and ask some questions. Don't get up there and speak from the position of being second cousin to God himself, where you are in the know about everything, because clearly Mr. Schumerth was not. I mean, he was so far off the mark. It was laughable, and yet it just angered me. I mean, I found myself yelling at the TV screen because he was so idiotic with his
I just want you to know
comments.
there's medication for that.
Yeah.
I had to take that right after I left the council. It does work, though. It takes kind of the edge off. What I found interesting is Shirley Maddox as well. Towards the end of the council meeting, she said, whew, it was a busy meeting or a heavy meeting. Tough meeting. But you know, we're all in this to do good. Now, this is the same council meeting, okay? Not only did we do absolutely nothing with offering choices to the public about how the government will be run, this is the same woman, along with the Fab Five, who decided to spend, what was it, an extra $100,000 on the Wisconsin Street Bridge, ladies and gentlemen. Thank God for Paul Esslinger and Brian Peschel. Ah, good Lord. Paul Esslinger asked a question like he is totally perplexed when he's up there. He's like, do I understand this right? We're going to spend extra dollars for decorative lighting on the bridge and colored concrete? Did I read that correctly? Oh, yes. Oh, by Jiminy Christmas, yes! We're going to have colored concrete on the bridge and decorative lighting. And Mr. Peschel, in just genius form, said, okay, let me make sure I understand this. A couple of budgets ago, and just this last budget, we're removing streetlights from neighborhoods because we can't afford the utility bills, but we're going to spend an extra $100,000 with decorative lighting and concrete on a bridge.
Yeah, and Mrs. Maddox's comments.
Did she say that we should do without butter burgers?
No. Among her comments was something to the effect about that. You know, one of the bridges in London is decorated this way, and it looks beautiful. I'm quite certain it does, but Mrs. Maddox, this isn't London. This is Oshkosh. We
The
don't.
monarchy is dead here.
We don't have Buckingham Palace down the street here at 215 Church Avenue. It's a building that our employees are kind of outgrowing. And we don't have a monarchy here. We don't have a royal family. And
but
by
we
the way,
might.
London Bridge is falling down. So
Well, she also talked about France. I mean, we hear so much about Europe from Mrs. Maddox, and I appreciate that there are people who are, world travelers and are very excited about the things that they see in other parts of the world and try to incorporate those as things that maybe we can take a piece of. And that's fine.
I agree.
I'm all for this cultural warming effect that we seem to be rubbing up against. But here's the thing. When exactly does common sense play into these? I mean, blending of cultures is one thing, but actually using the London Bridge and bridges in France as an example of how the Wisconsin Street Bridge in Oshkosh should be adorned. I'm having a little trouble with the disconnect. But here's Mrs. Maddox being a teacher. I love history. And in France, there was a time when the peasants, much as we may like to consider ourselves, were starving outside the gates of the Palace of France. And Marie Antoinette was in charge. And she said at one point, when the peasants were groveling for food and scraps outside the gates, she spoke to them and said, "Let them eat cake." And then they cut her damn head off. Okay, so here's what I'm saying. History's a wonderful thing, but it doesn't always turn out the way you hoped. And you keep telling us here in Oshkosh that we should eat cake when we're scratching for jobs and trying to keep our homes. You best be careful, because history might have a tendency to repeat itself.
Well, and I don't know if they're actually telling us to eat cake, but we're certainly supposed to go without some Butterburgers so that we can pay for the downtown redevelopment.
I still can't believe that comment. I don't think I'll ever get over that. And I don't think Shirley Maddox sometimes, I'm sure she's a very lovely lady and likes all this culture. But I think sometimes these folks really don't understand how folks are living.
They are so disconnected from the better majority of the people that they serve in this community. It's ridiculous. It's sad. It is sad.
They need to walk through these neighborhoods, and they need to go to these plants that are losing the jobs. And we keep hearing 190 jobs are leaving Leach. And as I said in one of the last shows, it's not just 190 jobs. These are 190 families whose lives are going to be forever changed.
And then you multiply that 190 by 3, because
those are the retail jobs.
For every manufacturing job lost, the experts have said repeatedly, 3-point-something other jobs are also affected, usually lost. So if you multiply 190 times 4, basically, because the 190 that you are originally losing, and then the 3 other service or retail sector jobs, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of jobs. I want to talk a little bit here about the downtown redevelopment, because we've touched on it tonight. Remember when this article appeared in the paper about the downtown bill reaching $219,000 for the consultants tab? It was just so interesting, because you were on the council.
I was the mayor.
Yeah. And why don't you share with the audience exactly what this is all about?
Well, when LDR was originally, I have to back up, because I think there's some things that need to be said here that were quietly swept under a rug.
Dismissed.
Yeah, well, because everybody wants to play nice in the sandbox, as long as it's their sandbox. When the concept of this whole downtown thing happened, I remember talking to Jackson Kinney and saying, we've got so many plans on the shelf that have not been dusted off, and I can't tell you how long. They're dull, they're boring. We need to, if you want people to buy into the redevelopment or changing of any area in town, not just downtown, because there's more to Oshkosh than just Main Street. We've got Oregon Street too, and we've got the South Side, and we've got 9th Avenue, where merchants are struggling all over, not just in downtown. And that irritates me too. So anyway, the concept was born that various groups were going to get together. It was going to be the City Council, the Oshkosh Commercial Development Corporation, and the foundation, the Community Foundation. We're going to get together, and they were all going to ante up some money. And we were going to all be equal partners in looking into hiring a consultant and looking at plans for what we thought would incorporate some ideas that the citizens would like. Okay, so you had to pick a group, a consultant group. And they had some really good ones in there. LDR was not one that I supported. Now, let me tell you what happened around that table. There were individuals like Phil Martini. There were all different kinds of people sitting at that table from all different venues. And one of the things that they said when they ran this meeting was, we want a consensus. We want, when we go to the public with this, we all have to agree. Even if we didn't agree, we're going to make it appear as though we all agreed to pick the same consultant. And at the time, Jane Vandehey and I both did not like LDR's plan. There were some very, very exciting, using Oshkosh on the water, getting people really jazzed about the city of Oshkosh and Winnebago County. This didn't excite me all that much, pedestrian walkways and just the language that was used, So anyway, we went along with, okay, we were outvoted, we have to live with it, but one of the components is to get the public input. What does the public think of this plan? My idea when I went in there is I said, throw me out some creative ideas and then we'll take them to the public and they get to pick. See, that's what I thought was going to happen. They get to pick. No, that's not how it happens. We pick the consultant who already has an idea of how the city should look. See, and that's the other thing, ladies and gentlemen. These plans were already done for the presentation. These people already had plans drawn, sketches done, because this is the presentation that they gave to us when we decided who we were going to pick for the vision of our city.
And yet, to listen to Mark Harris and the Oshkosh Northwestern, these town hall style listening sessions harvested these ideas, as the Northwestern said, and the plan was developed from there.
Now, I'm not going to say that maybe the plan wasn't tweaked here and there from some input from the public, because they did hold these public hearings. But I am here to tell you that the majority of that plan was already in concrete. I mean, these consultants came to the table and said, this is what we see. This is what we envision, because we've been in town and we've been doing sketches and we've been doing research, and this is what we think. And so when you get ideas that this price tag is jacked up because they've spent all this time doing all these other things, these plans were already done.
Well, and the whole gist of this article was that the downtown bill for planning some of these things had reached $219,000.
And it wasn't to exceed, what was it, 100 and...
Well, it was more than the $75,000 that the three agencies that you mentioned had pooled together to commission this study. And and really what they got for $219,000
was exactly what we saw the very first time at the table.
Well, and it involves Opera House Square, which is not much more than a bunch of grass. I mean, yeah, there's the sundial there, but that sundial I don't think was part of this.
It was totally separate.
And so basically it's a bunch of grass and a few things with respect to Riverside Park. But even Riverside Park is changing dramatically now because of the band shell that's been gifted to the city. So
you feel this?
Yeah. So obviously there's some problems there. And yet Mark Harris, listen to this, a quote from him.
Mayor Mark.
I think we're getting our money's worth.
Well, but again, you have to understand, this is a city council and a mayor that will lie to you and tell you that the property values in the downtown had depreciated to such a level that we were at a crisis mode. And now, since we have implemented these revitalization plans, that the property values have soared because of all of this redevelopment. That is the most ridiculous, blatant, bald-faced lie that I've ever heard from anybody. Because Mark Harris, being a banker, the city council being in charge, knows full well that those property values would have increased whether we did this or not, because they have created so many TIF districts that automatically increase the property value even though it did not contribute to the tax base.
And I'll take that one step further. While the property values may have increased, and everybody is trying to give us all the impression that this increase in these property values downtown is helping us all. Have your tax bills come down at all since this boom downtown
No.
in property values? Nor have mine.
Nor will they.
No, and I would venture to say that no one else's have either. As a matter of fact, they're only going to continue going up because Butterburger after Butterburger after Butterburger, to quote Mrs. Maddox, we're going to be paying through the nose for all these different projects.
Please remember, every time that you create a TIF district, while the developer does not pay any increased taxes, even though the property value goes up with the improvements. They don't pay any increased taxes with those property values, which means that hurts your public schools, that hurts your county government, and it hurts your city government. But we have a mayor that is so disingenuous and a newspaper that is so corrupt in their approach to this particular item because they are in bed with this whole thing. I remember sitting at the table, this is no lie, sitting at the table when this whole thing was being discussed in committee, and they said, we've got to get the Northwestern on this committee because we know that they'll give us good newspaper coverage to sell this to the public, because even if they don't like it, we'll keep at 'em and at 'em and at 'em until they just give up.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, people, this has been a flim-flam job from the beginning, and that we have a mayor like Mark Harris that says, oh, but look at the property values. We're so proud of what we've done. Let me ask you something, Cheryl. Did you notice the 100 block of Main Street, Ben Ganther's thing there? Do you see any commercial stuff going on?
No, and as a matter of fact, I still see 3 big, monstrous signs up announcing that
The grand
they have
opening?
No, that they have space available.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, those signs detract from any beauty that there may have been down there.
Looks like a junk hole.
Yeah. Yeah.
But see, that's another thing. They allowed Ben Ganther to come in and take that property based on that bid, even though when the man came into executive session, he had no plan in place. We had another bidder on that property who had a fully laid out plan. He had tenants already ready to go, but it wasn't on a big enough scale for these folks.
Yeah.
We had to do it on a bigger scale. You know why? Because then when you screw up really big. You know, you can't go into this and do it small and make sure that you're successful and make it look good and make it fit aesthetically. You got to screw up on a major league scale. Well, guess what? That's what we did. That's what we did.
We've got about 5 minutes left. I want to talk about a couple of other things real quick. You know, we've talked about OCDC, Oshkosh Commercial Development Corporation. And they're supposed to be bringing new business in. They're supposed to be retaining existing business.
It's working really well.
They don't do it. And, you know, contrasting Oshkosh and our little economic development company. Disaster. With Future Nina Incorporated, I want to show you something. This is a very nice publication put together by Future Nina Incorporated, which is their equivalent of an OCDC. And this thing comes out 4 times a year. And it's not real big. It's about 16 pages if you want to count the front and back covers. But it actually talks about things that they're doing in the city to promote the city, to promote business. And they have advertisers in here who support this publication. They have a few other articles in here as well. This is what a company like, an organization like OCDC should be doing to help promote the community, and maybe you'd have some people wanting to move here. Very briefly, a good thing, because I know we've kind of ragged on things, the lions that are around town. Now, I don't know that much about the lions, but, you know, they are cool looking, and a member of our crew is like, talk about the lions, talk about the lions. So I'm very quickly going to talk about the lions.
Talking about the
there
lions.
There are lions all over town, and they have been decorated.
Not real ones, by the way.
Right. They have been decorated up in different types of attire, if you will. They will be on display through September 20th, and then after that time period, they're going to be auctioned off to private parties or
Where does the
whomever.
money go? Do you know?
Well, it says proceeds from the project will benefit 4 entities, including an $11,000 gift from the sponsorships that directly support the public library. Then 50% is going to go to the Oshkosh Area Community Foundation to support grants for the arts, 25% to the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh Foundation for student scholarships, and another 25% to the Payne Arts Center and Gardens for artist residencies. So it's all art type related. And the nice thing about this is it's a beautiful thing in the community. It's really very clever, and it didn't cost the taxpayers 1 red cent. And that's the nice thing about this.
Amen.
You know, and I don't think that we have to complain about all the money that is spent. Some money is spent good, but we haven't seen a lot of that lately.
Very quickly
Yes.
to wrap up, for those of you that don't get the Oshkosh Northwestern or choose not to read it, there was actually something in here that you do want to pay attention to. The do not call lists for the telemarketers are going to expire. So if you have called in the past to get on the do not call list, that is going to expire. They have left a phone number in the Northwestern, and I wanted to repeat it on air for those of you who may not have gotten it. You need to call 866-966-2255. Again, that's 866-966-2255. You can call that at any time, even if you don't remember when you last called to get on the do not call list. You can call it now, and you will be put back on the list so that you don't have problems again. So I just wanted to, give you that information,
Right.
because God knows we can use less of that stuff.
Right, because every 2 years you have to re-register.
It didn't seem like it was that long ago.
I know. Well, it'll be, I think, probably in January. You can also do it online, I think, can't you?
Yes, you can. You can sign up online, and that is no call, all one word, .wisconsin.gov. Again, no call, one word, .wisconsin.gov. And that, again, you can sign up online for the do not call list.
And I tell you, I did it, and it's working so well.
It's been great.
Yeah, I really have loved it. The hour has flown by, as it always does.
Yeehaw!
I think there's going to be some interesting things coming down the pike with respect to government change. And
I think people are fed up, and I think with the presidential election right around the corner and seeing jobs go away, yeah.
Well, those things will be coming very shortly. Some announcements will be made. Anyway, thanks, folks, very much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you here with us and welcome us into your homes. We'll see you next time. For Melanie Bloechl, I'm Cheryl Hentz. Until we see you next time, take good care and keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.